I think that this is a caution. There's a way to be able to make your point known. There's a way to be able to advocate, but you can't block critical infrastructure.
I caught up with Marco Van Huigenbos, one of the Coutts Three defendants that was issued a guilty verdict last week in Lethbridge, Alberta. Robert Kraychik here in Calgary, Alberta, reporting for Rebel News.
People are expecting her to speak out in this manner, for her to deflect and to weaken her position for whatever the reason is wrong. So it's surprising, and it's frankly a bit disgusting.
Marco Van Huigenbos, George Jansen, and Alex Van Herk participated in the 2022 Coutts protest and blockade, which essentially overlapped in terms of time frame with the Freedom Convoy in Ottawa. The two demonstrations were broadly opposed to edicts, mandates, orders ostensibly issued in the interests of so-called public health by different levels of government to reduce COVID-19 transmission. There were times during the demonstration in Coutts that cross-border traffic between the U.S. and Canada at the Coutts Sweetgrass border crossing linking Alberta and Montana was completely blocked. I invited Van Huigenbos to share some remarks in response to comments made by Premier Danielle Smith regarding his conviction and those of his co-accused. I also asked him to forecast somewhat what laid before him.
The jury made their decision. It was a guilty verdict on Tuesday night. We obviously are expecting the sentencing could be up to 10 years in prison for those three men. That'll come this summer. They did make their decision rather quickly. Were you surprised by that? They made it about a couple hours.
Mm-hmm. It was, what I would say is that the legislation that we have in place for Critical Infrastructure Act, it doesn't matter what your ideology is or what your cause is or what your political perspective is. You simply cannot block critical infrastructure.
We're running two fundraising campaigns in relation to this ongoing story. First is for the defense costs, the lawyers' fees for the three men, George Jansen, Marco Van Huigenbos, and Alex Van Herk. You can donate at Coutts3.com, and keep in mind that lawyers do not work for free. They are definitely not cheap. And this fundraiser is being administered by a partner organization we work with, a nonprofit, the Democracy Fund. So if you do donate, you'll be issued a charitable receipt against your donation.
Yeah, Robert, last week, Tuesday at 8:45, 9 o'clock, all three of the Coutts Three were convicted. They were found guilty. Steps moving forward, we have a July 22nd arraignment date. At that time, there will be a sentencing date set, and there will be, in some way, a bit of a mini trial where the Crown and the defense make submissions to the judge, to the justice, to the court, and then it'll be up to the court to determine reasonable sentencing in relation to the prosecution, the trial. So we still have a bit of a fight ahead of us. In relation to sentencing, but for the next 3 months, largely uneventful. And I imagine after our arraignment, it'll still be 3-4 months before sentencing will actually occur.
So I watched this interview, at least a portion of it, with Premier Danielle Smith, and Danielle Smith was asked about these convictions, about this trial, and her remarks were basically that critical infrastructure shouldn't be blocked. Do you have any response to her response? Any thoughts you want to share about her remarks or other politicians' remarks or absence of remarks?
Yeah, I've been asked about this interview a few times now. I've actually done some interviews in relation to it.
I don't support Extinction Rebellion gluing themselves to the bridges. I don't support days of action that shut down our railway lines, and I don't support inconveniencing neighbors and farmers and those who want to get goods transported by shutting down borders and highways.
It was with Rachel Emmanuel with True North, and the question was specific. The question was specific to the conviction of myself and my two co-accused. Unfortunately, the Premier completely deflected. I feel that she wanted to answer in a certain way, and she might have attempted to, but very quickly she deflected, and she provided a non-answer, which referred to the Critical Defense Act, which the previous administration, Jason Kenney's administration, put in place. And I'll be honest, that that legislation was applicable to what we had done. But unfortunately, I don't think being found guilty in relation to that act was stringent enough in the eyes of Jason Kenney or previous Justice Minister Tyler Shandro. So instead, we were charged with mischief over 5,000, which has a much significant impact. It's possibly a 10-year jail sentence, a max. Her comments overall were, like I said, a complete deflection, inappropriate to some degree, and a very big disappointment. I understand that Danielle Smith cannot interfere in the judicial process. Nobody has asked her to interfere in that. She hasn't interfered in that. Her comment on a proceeding post-tense would not be considered interference. She was asked for a comment in relation to the conviction of 3 individuals, and one of those individuals that is an individual she knows by name. So it became a little personal for me. But what I don't understand is she would have been better off with no comment than with the comment she did provide. She referred legislation that had nothing to do with our prosecution. She brought up the context of blocking critical infrastructure in relation to ideology. Coutts was not an ideological protest. Coutts was a protest of individuals, Albertans, Canadians, white-collar, blue-collar, folk from all corners, from all backgrounds, from all religious backgrounds, ethnicities, etc. They were there for one reason. They were there in relation to the messed up ideology of government. They were there because government had lost their frickin' mind. So for the Premier who ran on this post-COVID anger to answer in this manner, it's frankly unacceptable and disgusting.
There's an argument to be made that the blockage of critical infrastructure was implemented by the government itself, and that was done on ideological bases. Now, as far as other politicians, elected officials, or even just appointed officials, have any of them, privately or publicly remarked on this, contacted you, shared some support, or offered some sort of critiques of what they saw as the prosecution?
Well, let's go back. I've been involved in municipal and provincial politics for a long, long time. I was a 6.5-year municipal politician. I was involved in the leadership review for Jason Kenney, the leadership race that Danielle Smith was part of, multiple AGMs, general elections. I have many friends and connections in the political world. Yes, I've had many reach out. Some during the prosecution. I've been in contact with many over the last 20 months leading up to my trial. And I've had some that have reached out due to some of my, maybe in relation to some of my sharp, critical analysis of the situation on social media platforms. So to say that I've had no contact with those elected to represent us and represent me as well, that would be false. I've had many good conversations, but it's, to me, what's said in private is easy and confident. It's about the position you take publicly that matters. Her re-entry into politics was a significant redemption story for her. She ran to her redemption story involved holding government accountable, and to now be that government and to weaken her stance and to change course on that, when she took significant heat from media. People are expecting her to speak out in this manner. For her to deflect and to weaken her position, for whatever the reason is wrong. So it's surprising, and it's frankly a bit disgusting.
Okay, now final reflections on the trial itself. Even though there's still some outstanding disputes regarding sentencing, anything that you want to share with the audience regarding what you may have contemplated in the past week since the verdicts were rendered?
Well, there's no surprise on my part in relation to my conviction. There was some surprise regarding the lack of evidence and the little evidence in relation to my co-accused, and unfortunately it was a guilty verdict across the board. I will say this: we can't appeal until sentencing, even if we would like to. It's not something we can do. A lot of people have mentioned appeal. There is no grounds and there is no reason to appeal at this point. Those who sat through these proceedings will know that. All the commentators and all the opinionists, or all those who hold strong opinions or have views on a corrupt process, if you weren't in that courtroom, I'm sorry. Your opinion isn't exactly relevant. You didn't observe how transparent Justice Keith Yamauchi was. We couldn't have done this with our phenomenal defense team. I mean, phenomenal. Michael, Ryan, Alan, and Matt. Phenomenal team, phenomenal defense. They fought for us. And last but not least, none of this was possible without the support of Rebel News. Rebel, along with the Democracy Fund, crowdfunded and supported the cause and has been there from day one and continues to be there for us. So for all those who have supported us, check out Coutts3.com. If you haven't already supported the cause, you still can. That is one way to help us in our fight. Many individuals ask me, how can we support you? How can we assist you, Marco? Post-conviction, post-verdict, as I continue to speak out and as I can continue to hold government accountable. Right now, my response to that would be Coutts3.com. Thank you.
Help fund our operational costs at Rebel News to produce this journalism. Primarily, that is to fund getting me out here to Alberta from Ottawa, where I live. So it's about airfare, it's about accommodation, it's about associated costs. So if you folks value this journalism that we're producing at Rebel News, please help us continue producing it and visit truckertrials.com.